My name is w.poynter and I'm Closer's technical manager, and essentially my role is in charge of developing Closer Discovery and the various components of metadata and data enhancement that go along with it. And essentially I'm going to try and explain what is involved in being a part of Closer Discovery and what does Closer Discovery mean as well. What does it mean to me anyway? First of all, you may have heard of any of these permutations of words to describe a tool like Closer Discovery, whether it be a metadata discovery platform or a uniform search engine or a variety of different terms. These all mean the same things. You may even see occasionally on our materials that we use different permutations of these words. But these days, the set of words I like most is probably search engine. Anytime you hear of a search engine, it is all of these things. It is searching metadata, it is often searching about data, and it's then making it available through a platform or a portal. So just think of Closer Discovery like a search engine. Yes, as I said, Closer Discovery is our flagship product, a search engine, as I just said, and we use throughout Closer Discovery international standards. And I'll explain a little bit later why that's very, very important. But throughout everything we do, we only use international standards, mostly DDI lifecycle. Some of you will have heard of it and probably been terrified by it, quite understandably. But we also use ISO standards and a variety of other things to make sure our work is consistent with the community, but also comparable with other people in the community. And we also provide through Closer Discovery a certain amount of enhanced searchability. And we do this in a variety of different ways, some of which are through applying topics, which Alison briefly mentioned, and I'll take you through a little bit more, life stages, and equivalencies, which is very much in development at the moment, and it won't be too easy to show, but I will try and to explain it. So Closer Discovery is almost entirely below the surface. What you see as a search engine is only a small fraction of the big picture of what actually makes Closer Discovery. And so I always think of it as an overweight man floating in a river. Most of it is below the surface. You can't see most of what's going on. And actually, it's very hard to analyze exactly how much makes up the website, but if we did it by cost alone, 88% of Closer Discovery is not the website. The website only costs 12% of the general cost to create Closer Discovery. So very much the website is the presentable face of Closer Discovery. Well, the rest of the work that goes on in the background that we will go into in a lot more depth is actually where a lot of the value is and a lot of the important work is happening. So, and to sort of try and give a bit of an image why, if we start with just one study for now, we've got the study and we may apply a certain amount of metadata about that study. So we may document a certain amount of metadata about a study, when it started, who's the current PI, a variety of different things, the selection process for the participants. And then we will document the sweeps or waves that belong to that study. Here I've only represented one just for simplicity. And yet again, we will document some information, the temporal information about when it happened in time, any restrictions on it was a subsample, for instance, in this way, and who was the PI at the time of that sweep and that data collection. From there, we document for every sweep a minimum of one questionnaire and one data set, but it can be many questionnaires and many data sets. That's what, if I ever see QRE in my slides, that's what that means, questionnaire. So for a single study, we've got many sweeps, and then each sweep can have up to many questionnaires and many data sets. Yet again, we have information on the instrument about when it went into the field, which collection agency conducted the field work, a variety of different things, including potentially different languages. And then the data sets, which you'll all be fairly familiar with the sort of documentation you may have for a data set. Is it made available via SAS or SPSS or a variety of different things. And then from there, the model is going to get bigger and bigger. And for any given questionnaire, we document actually a lot of things about a questionnaire, but I'm simplifying it down to just questions. We document normally many, many questions from a questionnaire. We document the routing by which you got to that question, the question text, any instructions, the response domain, so whether they were given a multiple choice or a numeric response domain, and so on and so on. And on the other side of the image, on the other side of the chart, we've got the variable. And we, as you'd expect, we document the variable name, the variable label, frequencies, so we know how people responded in a very sort of top-level way. We record the amount of valids, the amount of invalids, and so on and so on. So this is the starting framework, and this is somewhat familiar to other tools in the field. If, for instance, you are familiar with UKDS's Discover, it particularly documents on this strand. It doesn't document questions or questionnaires at all. It does put question text on variables, but that's a bit of a fudge. But it documents on this strand. If you're familiar with Maelstrom, I don't know if any of you are, Maelstrom documents essentially at this level. They're trying to extend it down, but they haven't really got that far yet. And various different resources document parts of this, but I haven't yet found one in production that documents this entire network of information. But on top of that, we actually then start to lace extra metadata, almost our metadata on top, to help users be able to navigate and interpret the metadata. So we, I don't know if it's entirely visible, it's at the bottom of the screen, we draw links between questions and variables to show the questions that we use to create that variable. So an example would be if you've got a BMI variable, it would use perhaps two questions, one that was asking what is the participant's height, and one that is using what is the participant's weight. And essentially we will create the mappings between that variable and those questions that we use to collect the information. Then we apply, this was set up, it was perfect. And then we apply, it's running off the screen now, but no, great question. Then we apply a topic from Closer's controlled vocabulary of about 118 topics, I think, under last revision. And exactly, smoking is one of our topics, and we have 117 other topics taken from HACCP and MESH, so known and tested controlled vocabularies, and they're applied against every question and every variable. Now, if we put it in the context of Closer, ignore the word topic up there, and we've got 8 studies, so if we actually take that and copy it 8 times for each one of our studies. It's slightly getting cut off on this projector. But so we take that metadata, I know it's now unreadable, it will get worse. So we take the metadata of 8 studies, we tether it all together under Closer. This ring around the outside now represents the topics. It's the only way I can do it on 2 dimensions. So every single question and variable for a given study is mapped to these Closer topics, which also allows you, if you are looking at a topic, let's say smoking, to quickly find the questions and variables that are under the topic smoking for every one of the Closer studies. It's not a topic per study. Then, as I briefly mentioned in my intro, another layer goes on top, the equivalency layer. This is almost like a more specific topic, but also doesn't have a controlled vocabulary tied to it. And so if you had, in my example, a BMI variable, you might be interested in where are the other BMI variables longitudinally throughout a study, but also on the various other studies. Now, BMI is not worthy of a whole topic. It would just become under something along the lines of body composition. But this allows us to thread together variables so users can quickly navigate along a study and between studies. And I kind of think of it a bit like Amazon's those that bought this also bought that. You'll be given a list of similar stuff that you may want to use for harmonization. We won't tell you, these are identical. We just say these things look pretty similar, and then we'll allow the researcher to make the judgment. So that goes around the outside. Then I'm nearly done, I'll show you. And then, as Alison said in her presentation, the point of all of this is to do it once and use it many, many times. And already, through various different connections, some of these are in place, some of these are pending, but they're on their way. Because we have used the controlled vocabularies of MESH and HACCP to create our controlled vocabulary, it's easier to work in between studies that use those controlled vocabularies and find relationships. We've also created a map with BHPS, the British Household Panel Study, to yet again enable quicker movement between Understand Society, which has got Closer topics attributed, and BHPS, which has got BHPS topics, an effective map that can be done automatically rather than manually. On the left-hand side, we've got, instead of these 6-sided shapes, are conjoined vocabularies. On the left here, I've got entities. And at the top there, Maelstrom, which I mentioned. Because Maelstrom is quite interested at the moment in getting in more variable and data set level information, like I said, and they want information about some of our studies that are in closer, probably a better way of phrasing it. They want a variable level of information. Instead of the study having to repeat all that work and do it all over again, instead we're looking to attach the two portals or harvest the information out of Discovery and repurpose it for Maelstrom. Midas is actually uses the same architecture as us from top to bottom. So we're looking at setting up a fairly routine sort of sharing between the two portals. It's sort of built in from the bottom, so it should work fairly smoothly. And at the bottom, we are intending to work more closely with UKDS, one of our major partners, as Alice had said, and give a better deliverance between data discovery and data acquisition. So allow users to browse and appraise data on our search engine, Close Discovery, and then move them over to UKDS when they want to request data from the ESRC studies. And very much at the bottom here, and I hope you can see it, I've got the study again, or the studies again. This is actually already very useful, but there is a lot of utility for the study itself in all of this information being tied together. The studies are now able to use the documentation in Close Discovery to know more about their own study and to automate more processes within their study. I'm certainly aware of people at Bristol, Southampton, and CLS at UCL who use Close Discovery to search for quick information on their own study. It is just one nice centralized place in where you can come for information that has been standardized.